Hello, neighbors, and thanks for joining me today.
Today's topic is going to be the midlife crisis and how Uranus contributes to it. Typically, as a society, when we think of the midlife crisis, we usually attribute it to males in their 50 years of age, going through some sort of breakdown, leaving their family home, purchasing a sports car, and picking up a young girl that doesn't want them for them, but for their money. This is a highly exaggerated, sexist, and biased view of the midlife crisis. So today we're going to break down what the midlife crisis really is, how Uranus contributes to that, and how it eventually affects everybody and not just the males. So the planet Uranus takes about 84 years to go around the sun. So basically, the position that Uranus is when a person is born is going to take 84 years to get back to that exact same position. Uranus spends about 7 years in each zodiac sign. So with that said, when transit Uranus is opposed natal Uranus, that's the halfway mark, which is around 42 years of age, give or take. So when transit Uranus is opposite the natal Uranus, a person tends to feel a weirdness, an anxiousness. This is the time when they start to look at their life and see if it's everything that they dreamed of, if all the goals they wanted to accomplish were accomplished. And with that, it comes a feeling of, I have one more chance to make something out of my life and I need to start today. Because of this feeling and the anxiousness, strange things can occur. It can either turn out good for the native or bad for the native. So this usually happens around 42, give or take. So it could be 39, it could be 45, but it's around the 40 mark. So it's not as old as 50, even though 40 and 50 are still young. So the person is coming to basically a crossroads. What have I accomplished in this life? Did I get everything I wished for? And even though this person is still of a youthful age, 40, the realization of this can cause a huge amount of stress and nervousness and anxiety and create unstable actions. And because they view this as a crisis in their life, they tend to act quickly and rational, leaving commitments behind to pursue something that they've always dreamed of, something that they believe that they're deserving of, and taking on a lifestyle opposite to their current lifestyle. So although Uranus plays a major contributing factor to the midlife crisis, it isn't the only planet that contributes to the events of the midlife crisis. There's Chiron returns happening around that time, Jupiter returns, Saturn oppositions, and Neptune square Neptune. So although we're focusing on Uranus opposition contributing to the midlife crisis, we have to keep in mind that it is prolonged due to the other planetary energies that are happening around that time. So celebrities tend to keep their private life somewhat private, especially back in the day. But we're still going to look at the public events that occurred during their Uranus and Uranus opposition. But please keep in mind that when a person is experiencing a midlife crisis, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's an embarrassing breakdown. The purpose of the midlife crisis or the Uranus opposed Uranus aspect is to basically shake shit up and incite change that will carry forward in the next half of the native's life. With that said, let's start with the funny comedian hailing from Canada, Jim Carrey. So Jim Carrey experienced his midlife crisis during the age of 41, give or take a year or two. And you would think that he had a pretty good midlife crisis, considering that he had the second most profitable movie of his career, earning $25 million off of Bruce Almighty, right? Dead stamp in the middle of his midlife crisis. But there were other things going on, especially with his relationships. Jim Carrey was super scared to be alone and jumped literally from one relationship to the other, regardless of compatibility. Jim Carrey didn't have a relationship lasting more than 7 years, and that 7-year relationship was his first marriage. His second marriage only lasted about 8 months, and that was to Lauren Holly, who he did the movie Dumb and Dumber with. After the marriage with Lauren Holly ended, Jim Carrey had a pretty good idea that he didn't want to be married again and he didn't want to have any kids again. He had one daughter with his first marriage, and he knew and was content with the fact that I'm satisfied with my one daughter and I'm satisfied with just being in a relationship without the ties of marriage. However, even though he had that knowledge, he still entered into a relationship with Renee Zellweger and proposed to her. So they were engaged and were together for about almost 2 years. Needless to say that relationship ended badly because they both didn't want the same things. So after the devastating and angry breakup with Renee Zellweger, Jim started to enter into the beginning of his midlife crisis, and he did the typical thing. He went back to his normal routine of dating back to back. He purchased a Malibu home for almost $10 million. He had a huge movie success with Bruce Almighty, and he continued to date until he settled into a committed relationship with Jenny McCarthy, who had a child that had autism. So her hands were already pretty full. And on top of that, she wasn't looking for marriage. So it really fit Jim's criteria, or did it? Because once again, that situation didn't work out. And I believe it didn't work out because the real issue with Jim Carrey is that he lacked a relationship with self. Jim had to face the fact that he needed the time alone and he needed to learn how to appreciate his own company and stop avoiding getting to know himself by hiding in the relationships. Today, Jim Carrey appears to be a much happier and aware person that enjoys his solitude, where he can spend time with himself, dabble in the arts, and connect with the world when he feels fit, not because he's trying to avoid his own company. Okay, so we're going to move on to the beautiful, spiritual, genius, entertainment mogul, Oprah Winfrey. So Oprah went through her midlife crisis, aka Uranus opposing Uranus transit, during the ages of 39-40. And although the midlife crisis seems to bring about of nervousness and anxiety and a bit of scariness, it seems that Oprah Winfrey went through a pretty good midlife crisis considering. I mean, she is used to this energy because she is an Aquarius, and Aquariuses are used to Uranian energy. So let's get into it. During Oprah's midlife crisis, she did have a traditional wedding planned to marry Stedman. Instead, she backed out of the wedding and decided to enter into a spiritual union that didn't really involve marriage. It didn't involve like the government. It just involved two souls coming together with the purpose of love and making a conscious decision to be life partners. Also, during that time when she was experiencing her midlife crisis, talk shows in general were going through this transition between talking about problems on a serious note or entering into that trashy talk show era such as Jerry Springer. Oprah really had a hard decision whether she's going to follow the trend and offer more of a exploitative theme to her talk show, or she's going to stay the course and talk about real issues and spirituality. Ultimately, Oprah decided that she's going to keep her talk show tabloid free. And initially, the ratings did fall, but she did earn respect from her viewers and was soon rewarded with an upsurge in popularity. And her decision to reinvent her talk show allows her to still reign as the undisputed champ of daytime television. However, even though Oprah decided to keep her talk show classy, it wasn't an easy process. Winfrey deciding to focus more on literature and self-improvement, mindfulness, and spirituality. Although all those topics are good topics, she was highly criticized for unleashing a confession culture and promoting controversial self-help ideas. However, despite the criticism, Oprah Winfrey decided to stay the course. So not only was Oprah Winfrey's midlife crisis centered around how she defines relationship as opposed to society and how she wanted to play out her career, she also had a physical crisis. Oprah Winfrey was really known for her fluctuating weight, and during this time she made a conscious decision to lose 90 pounds, getting down to her ideal weight of 150, and that prompted her to compete in the Marine Corps marathon. So overall, Oprah Winfrey's midlife crisis centered around relationships, dropping out of a traditional union for something more personal to her, redefining her career and how she wanted to change her image moving forward. And like I said before, it wasn't without criticism, but it's something that definitely benefited her for the next half of her life. All right, so we're moving right along to Miss Tyra Supermodel Banks. So Tyra Banks has been doing her thing for quite some time, from supermodel to actress to owning her own show. She's been very successful career-wise. However, Tyra has been quoted as saying, since she was 24, that she would always have children in 3 years. And then 25 would come and it would be the same thing. I'm going to have children in 3 years. Until she reached 40 and she realized, oh my God, where are my damn kids? So needless to say that Tyra Banks' midlife crisis centered around motherhood. This realization and fear of never ever becoming a mom propelled Tyra to sort of put her career on slow motion while she went through IVF. The IVF process was a super emotional struggle for Tyra, and it didn't fabricate anything. So eventually she decided on surrogacy, which brought about her beautiful son. I must add that during this process, Tyra was in a relationship, and right in the middle of her midlife crisis, she took on the role of motherhood. And she did return to America's Next Top Model and ending the relationship with her longtime boyfriend on a friendly note to where they co-parent amicably. So Tyra's midlife crisis brought about a huge change from business mogul to motherhood. And with her attention away from romantic relationships, she was able to give her undivided attention as a mother to her son, and she loves doting on this little boy. So before I forget, Tyra went through her Uranus and Uranus opposition when she was 44 years of age. Okay, so lastly, we're going to get to Tom, the Hollywood legend Cruise, an exceptional actor who unfortunately had a very public midlife crisis. Tom's midlife crisis was very public and one of the most embarrassing ones that I can remember. Everyone's seen him jumping on the couch like a loose cannon, declaring his love for Katie Holmes, but in fact, that wasn't even the midst of his midlife crisis. That was actually a few years out from his midlife crisis. However, his midlife crisis is the reason that we've seen Tom acting like such a lunatic on Oprah. So let's take it back before Tom's actual Uranus opposed Uranus opposition began. So Tom was 40 when his midlife crisis began, but just before that, his marriage to Nicole Kidman had come to an end, and this was the start of his midlife crisis. This initiated a journey in where Tom went looking for a mate that would be okay with Scientology. He dated Penelope Cruz for a few years, and the relationship did not work out due to her refusal to convert to Scientology. He even tried to woo Sofia Vergara to no avail because she was terrified of Scientology. There was even a point in 2004 when the church and Scientology tried to pair Tom up with an actress who was also a member of the church. Her name was Nazanin Boniadi, and they had an 18-year difference. They even went as far as telling Boniadi that her then current boyfriend was cheating on her so that she can split with him and get with Tom. After the split with her boyfriend, the Church of Scientology put her through a vigorous makeover so that she would be more appealing for Tom. After all that grooming, they only dated for a few months until Tom broke up with her through his Scientologist handlers. Hurt and confused, she confided in a friend who then spilled the beans in a report, making the Church of Scientologists furious with Nazanin and subjected her to 4 months of menial labor, which included cleaning toilets with a toothbrush, amongst other things. While she was doing her labor, Tom got a hold of Katie Holmes, who probably was okay with Scientology in the beginning due to her being a Sagittarius and very open-minded with religion, until she found out how stifling it could be and fled with her daughter Siri, going no contact from Tom. Tom has been flying under the radar since going no contact with his daughter Siri, as she is deemed as a suppressive person from the Church of Scientology. I believe that Tom's midlife crisis was a wake-up call for him to realize that no matter how much power he had, emotions cannot be forced, and he can't force people to engage in things that they didn't want to engage in. It's about loving people for who they are and respecting their free will. Tom loves his daughter and opted not to see her, as he believed that this is a way of protecting her sense of free will, obviously going by the rules of Scientology. There was a source that was quoted as saying that he loves all his children and each of them has a right to their own story. Now that right there is progress. Hopefully in the future he finds another way to accept others' sense of free will without having to shun them. There's hundreds of stories that demonstrates the events of the midlife crisis. I picked these 4 stories because I feel like it's a good demonstration of how the midlife crisis could shake things up in a good way and how it can shake it up in a not so good way. There is a running theme with the stories from Oprah, Tom, Tyra, and Jim Carrey. It was all about like relationships and redefining and breaking free from relationships that no longer serve the person that they were becoming. And a lot of it had to deal with being true to self and accepting your individual uniqueness so that you can have healthy relationships with others. And a lot of that has to do with breaking free of societal norms and organizational norms and going back to a place when you were younger and you didn't have any constraints on you and you just wanted to be free to do the things that you wanted to do, the things that make you truly happy. Okay, so that concludes the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And just remember that as above, so below, what you put out is what you're going to take in. And I will see you next time. Take care.